Well, how far can you go to whitewash the whole Negreira and Barca thing? To try to lie to the public and say that nothing happened here, this has me absolutely spinning. Let's tell the story because, hey, all the Narnians are there saying, see how nothing's happening? Hey, they've recycled something from 2023. It's amazing. And now I'll tell you how, because it's really outrageous, but we're not going to laugh it off. And above all, understand that the investigating judge is not stupid, and justice is not stupid. Even though the media tries to, well, take people for fools, not everyone is like that, but there are many who do. But look, when you come up against justice, that's it. You can't get away with everything anymore. But be careful. Creating narratives is important. And in that, the people from Barca are real masters, right? And that's what they constantly try to do. But here they've been caught, and instantly. And besides, it's absolutely ridiculous. Let's talk about Riquelme's statements from this afternoon too. He still hasn't confirmed it. I think he will do it. And we mentioned it in the previous video. To run for the Real Madrid elections, but he said to give him 2 or 3 days, and then he'll confirm it. Anyway, he's talking about presenting something that makes sense, something for 15 or 20 years for Real Madrid, so I think he will. But today he either couldn't or didn't want to say anything yet. And in 2 or 3 days, before the deadline for possible candidates to come forward and then for the electoral process to begin, well, it seems like he's going to do it. All right, as I said, let's get started. We've got many interesting things. Let's go. Well, welcome, Madridistas. How are you? How are you doing? Let's start with this, which is incredible. Well, today, Mundo Deportivo published this. It was also done by Ramon Fuentes. I know him, and I'm honestly really surprised. I'm really surprised. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that, out of respect for the person, right? But the fact is that this was published, that the tax agency concluded that the payments to Negreira were not to pay referees. That's how it is. Today, that's like saying today that Madrid won the 2023 Copa del Rey, right? It's almost been 3 years since we won the last Copa del Rey in 2023. I mean, imagine that today it said Madrid has won the Copa del Rey, and the year isn't mentioned, right? But it's also information from the tax agency to the prosecutor's office, which is where the case was referred, even from 2022. Anyway, all this about Negreira has been known since before, when it hadn't expired yet. We've already talked about that on this channel on other occasions. Everything became known before the statute of limitations ran out. Yet when it finally comes to light, they claim it's time-barred and nothing can be done. Don't go around with that confused look on your face the next day. You know what? There's nothing that can be done. Okay. All right. Anyway. Well, in 22, it had already expired, but it was known from before. It was known from before. Here, look, between them all, they let it become time-barred and well. Anyway, from an administrative point of view or through ethical means, they're trying to do something that couldn't be done or they didn't want to do in Spain. So that there is sporting justice. We'll see later about justice through criminal proceedings, but sporting justice. How is it possible that Barca paid 8.4 million to the second in command of the referees for more than 2 decades? By 4 presidents, and one of them, the current Barca president, quadrupled the payments, and they haven't faced any consequences. They haven't been punished at all. And what's worse, since they weren't punished, none of the clubs stood up at the time, or all of them, right? Starting with Real Madrid, refusing to play in the competition anymore. Like we always say, if it had been Real Madrid who had done all this, the competition would have already been stopped. The next one wouldn't have started, even in the same year, 2023, and everything would have been an unbearable scandal. Until Real Madrid might have said, hey, you know what? I'm out of here. Because, of course, out of shame, right? Anyway, the fans and the journalists who cover the news, who cover the news about Real Madrid or give opinions about Real Madrid, whether it's in the media or on this platform, we would have taken a stand because it wouldn't have seemed logical to us for our club to do this, right? Unlike what they've done. Over there in Barcelona, fans and journalists close to Barca. But anyway, I don't want to go on any longer. That was the news, in quotes, that Mundo Deportivo came out with today. And I'm going to tell you the story. This happened as follows. Miguel Galán arrives, and here he explains it. Here, good old Juan Luis Martín de Pozuelo explains it. I've got it here. Well, actually, Tiempo de Juego 2 from the Copay network. The Spanish tax agency determined that the payments to Negreira were not for paying referees. I mean, they've all bought it, man. It's unbelievable. Well, I'm going to go first to good old Juan Luis because, of course, all this comes up because Galán, Miguel Galán, was very outraged. Put him on for me. We created a website with all the information and documentation, everything. One day, Miguel Galán will have to explain why he does all this. Seriously, it's just unbelievable. But anyway, the point is that everything is on this page on negreiragate.com. Remember, right? We've already told you, you have the link in the description of this video. Well, then Miguel Galán comes along and starts snooping around there, right? And then he picks up on that document that's also there because we don't hide anything here. Everything is on this website, right? And then he posts a tweet and talks about it. And it's true that it's a document that's there, but now we'll see what that document is about. As it says here, Juan Luis says, no one can lie and manipulate more than Miguel Galán, who quotes a preliminary report from the tax agency from 2021 as if it were current. He's so clueless, he brought out the report from Arnott. It was because of that action by the tax agency in 2022 that the prosecutor's office, the National Police Corps, and then the Civil Guard got involved. Someone tell Miguel Galán for me that he's a clown and the journalist, so they take away his credentials. In this case, I imagine he's referring to Ramon Fuentes. What a way to spread fake news, says Juan Luis here, right? And indeed, the story has been as follows. As this Madrid spot account boasts here. This is not a new report, but the one prepared in 2022, Barca's public relations department is working overtime to stop the reputational damage. Everything comes out, everything has to come from there. Presumably, Mundo Deportivo, a pro-Barca newspaper, refers to a tweet by Galán, which in turn alludes to the 2022 tax agency report available at negreiragate.com. There is no other report from the tax agency. The tax agency detected the irregularities and sent the file to the prosecutor's office, which is the entity that started the investigation. And it says here what happened. Miguel Galán went to the website, a site created by a group that is actively pressuring UEFA and FIFA to sanction Barcelona. He took old files from years ago and published them as usual. Based on that, the pro-Barca newspaper Mundo Deportivo published an article today. Then all the usual accounts. If there aren't any, I wrote it oddly since it's in English and we're translating. Okay, because, well, there's this Real Madrid account that covers it well. And it also has everything that's happened here, right? Then all the usual Barca accounts from Resha, Reshat, Rahman to Barca Times and the smaller ones started working overtime to spread the fake news. Of course, that's why there's been so much noise to the point that Tiempo de Juego and the Copay Network and several others have fallen for it, right? They're too stupid to even spread this news. In particular, they're claiming that the tax agency has published a report now, when in reality, the tax agency handed the file over to the Civil Guard 3 years ago. Well, actually, it was to the prosecutor's office. Then the Civil Guard investigated by order of the investigating Judge Aguirre, who right now is not the investigating judge because he retired. And of course, since then until now, there has been, among other things, a devastating report from the Civil Guard and some rulings from Judge Aguirre in which litigation was mentioned. Devastating report, Aguirre litigation. And of course, back then there were rulings from Aguirre mentioning litigation. And of course, devastating. Florentino said this, and that's why they want to sue him. Well, sue him for quoting what a judge has said. Another thing is when Florentino says, they've stolen 7 league titles from me, which I don't know if back then there was, among other things, a report anyway. As we mentioned in the ruling the other day, Laporta has said, Judge, Laporta ha dicho cosas peor. There are referees who go against us anyway. There's the rigged league, etc., etc., etc. And they've never sued Laporta and Florentino for this, but now they do. Honestly, it's unbelievable. What we've experienced today with this topic is unbelievable. And indeed, even Pavel Fernandez is saying, despite the evidence, the mouthpieces will keep saying that Barca bought referees. The tax agency assures that this was not the case. And it's the same, swallowing it all, swallowing everything. It's incredible. And of course, some of us had to come out and say it's from 2022 idiots. You're just idiots. Anyway, the noise has already been made, but like I said, let's trust that well, that justice isn't stupid, that the judge isn't stupid, and that this is being handled by adults, both intellectually and professionally, right? Look, our TV reporters, so you can see that the media also picked up on this when it came out. Tax authorities found no evidence payments to Negreira affected results. In April 2022, the tax agency warned the prosecutor's office that it had not, pay attention, that it had not been able to verify the payments from Barça to Negreira. But they handed it over to the prosecutor's office, telling them, I think it's even mentioned there in the document. You have to look into this yourselves to see if, in fact, a crime has been committed here, right? Remember that this issue always starts with the tax office because they saw that Barca wanted to deduct these payments, and that's when everything was discovered. Otherwise, we wouldn't have noticed, right? This wouldn't have happened. Well, I think at some point it would have come out anyway because, of course, it was so outrageous, but it all started there. And it all started there when it hadn't expired yet. I mean, I think between 2019 and 2020, all of this was already known. If things had been sped up and someone wanted to slow them down, this wouldn't have expired under that sports law in the administrative section, and Barca would have been relegated, or they would have relegated them. They wouldn't have been invited to the following Champions Leagues, and the damage, which is what a club that pays millions to the head of the referees should have suffered, would have already been done. But someone wanted to save Barca, and someone still wants to keep saving them. These media outlets are being showered with money from the league, with money from Tebas, spreading these lies, but with the sole objective of saving Barca, of making sure Barca doesn't fall. All of this is very serious. All of this is very serious. I don't know if in this tweet from Elena that I'm looking at here, she explains it very well, so I don't miss anything. And above all, to recap how all this actually happened. This is news from April 2022. Well, it's a report from April 2022, although we found out about it later, logically, because the Negreira case broke out in February 2023, and from that moment on, everything else started to come out, right? It's incorrect to say the tax agency concluded the payments to Negreira weren't for referees. The agency said it couldn't prove it. Precisely because Negreira's activity wasn't justified, the tax agency suggested that it could be illicit services, as I said before. That's why they took it to the prosecutor's office. Due to this and other signs, like billing ending when Negreira was replaced at the CTA, the matter was sent to the prosecutor's office. The case, and finally the club ended up being accused of, among other crimes, sports corruption. In 2023, continuing from that point up to today, I can imagine what this is about, but the manipulation is shameful. Get informed. And then also, in addition, here is attached the Civil Guards report and everything that has happened since then. I remember that, look, in the statements from Laporta, Bartomeu, Negreira's son, with all the contradictions that have been between all of them. Mundo Deportivo? No, let's not count on them, but Tiempo de Juego. On the Cope Network, nothing surprised them, and if they made any headlines, it was something that, well, wasn't accurate. For example, they didn't emphasize that the son was saying no, that the written reports were mine, and they're from 2014 onward. People who listen to Tiempo de, I listen to it from time to time and all that, but I get my information from other places. But there are a lot of people who only listen to Cope and they don't know anything about this. That the son stated at the time that his written reports are from 2014, which is when he started working. Not even for Barca, for that now deceased executive, and that he would re-invoice it to Refacio. And what Laporta is saying, that the written reports have been around for much longer. That some were lost, they were at the bottom of a closet, and that others were lost. The ones at the bottom of the closet were those, but where were they? The ones Laporta says that are also written and are from the father, from 2001 to 2014. The thing is, they weren't there, they don't exist, they were verbal. And this isn't known or hasn't been told because these outlets didn't want to report it. Now, regarding this from Mundo Deportivo, there they are, spreading it to say, see how the tax agency said this wasn't the case? They're deceiving people in a shameful way. It's unbelievable, man. Anyway, well, having said all this, damn, 15 minutes already. That's crazy. I really do go on. Let's get to Riquelme. Enrique Riquelme said this today at an event in Madrid about whether he would run or not. Well, I imagine you've already heard the statements. Let's repeat them and then we'll comment on them. Wait a moment. There's no sound on this and things were going so well and fast. Come on.
I understand you're interested in what's coming in the next few days. We're still working. They've given us very little time to organize something that really makes sense, something good for Real Madrid. We're not going to waste our time, and in the next few days, 2 or 3 days, we'll decide what we're going to do and whether we're going ahead. Will it really be something that makes sense and is exciting for a new Real Madrid for the next 10, 15, or 20 years? So thank you all very much for your interest. I hope to update you in the next few days.
Do you have the financial guarantee? Do you have the financial guarantee?
Yes, of course.
Do you have a team? Do you have a plan?
In the next few days, we'll be able to say something more.
Well, do you have the financial guarantee? Yes, of course, because if not, we wouldn't be talking about this. Careful. He phrases it conditionally, but he's really saying they want to do it and probably will. Still, it'll take 2 or 3 days because he's not going to announce today that they're moving forward or with whom. No, he's just postponing it, as I understand. So in 2 or 3 days, today's Monday, right? The candidacy must be submitted before Saturday. If he says he has the financial guarantee, well, that's it. I think it's 187 million. Go to a bank and say, hey, here they are, here I have them, and I guess they'll be ready. With what he says, his exact words, it's something that makes sense and excites Madrid fans for the next 15 or 20 years. I was saying with Quique Recio in the previous video that yes, of course, Florentino goes with Mourinho. Florentino comes in with all that experience of these 26 years in which, of course, many have been much better than worse, even though there have been bad periods, this last one, and the people. It's very difficult. It's just very difficult to beat Florentino. It's very difficult to beat Florentino with very little time. But this gentleman, well, he picks up the challenge and it seems like he's going to do it. We'll keep reporting. But anyway, I'm burning with curiosity to know if he does it, what strong card he's going to play. Because I insist Florentino with Mourinho, and given who Florentino is. And fighting that is not easy at all, even though Florentino at the time seemed like he wasn't going to fight against what Lorenzo Sanz did. With the 8th European Cup, the Champions League trophy, arriving from Paris, which Real Madrid had achieved, to the capital of Spain, and we thought that was impossible. Florentino turned it around with Figo, with that move, right? And also with the mail-in vote thing, because Florentino was very, very clever there. And because, above all, he had already made himself known, which is what I think Riquelme is missing. A lot among the media in previous years, because he had already run with Mendoza, he had lost, but he had already earned recognition so that people more or less knew him. And it's a path he had already taken, and that's always important. Maybe that's the path he wants to take now, because he knows he could lose if he runs against Florentino, but it would be for the next ones for which he'd have to wait 4 years, but at least the members would already know him. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. And that's it. See you in the next one. Give it a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel. Please comment, share, and have a good night. Bye.